The bitter wind howled across the moors as Beatrice Payne pulled her threadbare cloak tighter around her shoulders. Winter had come early this year, and with it, more misfortune than she could bear. The plague had swept through their village 3 summers past, claiming her husband Thomas and their 2 daughters. Their small farm, once prosperous enough to feed a family, had withered under neglect and grief. Now, at 47, Beatrice found herself alone, soon to be homeless as the landlord had made it clear her tenancy would end before the first snow. "Widow Payne," called a voice, breaking through her melancholy thoughts. Magistrate Thornton approached, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. "I have received correspondence regarding your person." Beatrice straightened her back. "More troubles, no doubt." "What is it, sir?" "It appears your mother's cousin, Eleanor Winfield, has passed in the northern county. She has named you her sole heir." He handed her a sealed parchment. "The solicitor's details are within. I understand the inheritance is a small cottage and some land near Farnsworth." Beatrice stared at the parchment in disbelief. Cousin Eleanor, a woman she had met perhaps twice in her childhood. I had not heard from her in decades. "Well, it seems she remembered you. The solicitor expects you within a fortnight to claim your inheritance." 2 weeks later, Beatrice stood before what could barely be called a cottage. The roof sagged perilously, with several holes visible from the ground. The stone walls, though sturdy in places, crumbled in others. Overgrown brambles had nearly reclaimed the structure, and the small plot of land surrounding it seemed barren and useless. "As you can see, Mistress Payne, the property has been neglected since your cousin's husband died some 10 years ago," explained Mr. Finch, the solicitor. "Eleanor herself moved to the village proper 5 years past, but maintained ownership." "And this is all?" Beatrice asked, unable to mask her disappointment. She had sold what little she owned to make the journey, hoping for something that might provide a new beginning. The cottage, for acres of land, and... He paused as a mournful howl echoed from behind the structure. "Ah, yes." "And the dog." A large, shaggy gray hound emerged from around the cottage, its ribs visible beneath matted fur. Upon seeing them, it approached cautiously, head low. Eleanor was quite specific about the dog. "His name is Keeper." She insisted he remain with the property. Beatrice sighed. Another mouth to feed when she could barely sustain herself. Yet as the dog drew near, his sorrowful eyes seemed to mirror her own losses. "Very well," she murmured, extending a hand to the animal, who sniffed it gently before pressing his head against her palm. Mr. Finch handed her a small wooden box. "Your cousin left you this as well. Her personal effects. Now I must be on my way. Good day, Mistress Payne." As the solicitor's cart disappeared down the rutted path, Beatrice surveyed her inheritance with a sinking heart. The cottage was nearly uninhabitable, the land appeared worthless, and now she had a dog to care for. Yet, as desolate as it appeared, it was hers. No landlord could evict her, no bailiff claim it for unpaid debts. For the first time in years, Beatrice owned something of value, however meager that value might be. That night, huddled beside a small fire in the least damaged corner of the cottage, Beatrice opened Eleanor's box. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket, a few dried lavender sprigs, and a leather-bound journal. The dog, Keeper, watched attentively as she thumbed through the journal's yellowed pages, filled with Eleanor's careful script. The entries detailed mundane village life, until Beatrice came upon an entry dated 15 years prior. Lord Walton visited again today. His interest in purchasing our land grows more insistent. Frederick refuses each time, though the sum offered increases. I fear my husband knows something he will not share with me, something that makes this seemingly worthless plot of land valuable to such a powerful man. Beatrice frowned, turning to the next page. Several entries followed describing Frederick's increasing paranoia, his late-night excursions on the property, and Lord Walton's persistent offers. Asterisk Frederick has sworn me to secrecy. What he has shown me must never be revealed, not even in these pages. The danger would be too great. He says if anything happens to him, Keeper knows. The faithful dog always watches, always guards. Asterisk the entry ended abruptly. Beatrice looked up at Keeper, who met her gaze with intelligent eyes. "What secrets are you keeping, old friend?" she whispered. The dog's ears perked up, and he rose suddenly, padding to the cottage door. He scratched at the weathered wood, whining insistently. "Not tonight," Beatrice said firmly. "It is too dark, and I am too weary." Keeper reluctantly returned to her side, but his restlessness was evident. Throughout the night, he would rise, pace to the door, then return to lie beside her, sighing heavily. Beatrice slept fitfully, Eleanor's journal entries mingling with her dreams. Dawn broke gray and misty. Beatrice awoke to find Keeper already at the door, pawing impatiently. Groaning, she rose, her joints stiff from sleeping on the hard floor. "Very well," she conceded, opening the door. Keeper bounded out, racing toward a stand of ancient oak trees some distance from the cottage. Beatrice followed slowly, surveying her land in the morning light. Though overgrown, she could see where gardens had once been. Perhaps with work, she might coax vegetables from the soil come spring. A sharp bark drew her attention. Keeper stood beneath the largest oak, digging frantically at its roots. As Beatrice approached, she noticed something peculiar. The ground around the tree seemed disturbed in an unnatural pattern. "Stop that," she scolded, pulling him away from his digging. "We have work to do on the cottage before winter truly sets in." The following days fell into a pattern. Beatrice worked to make the cottage habitable, patching the roof with materials scavenged from the surrounding woods, clearing debris, and scrubbing years of grime from what furniture remained. And every day, Keeper would try to lead her to different places on the property: the oak tree, a dry well behind the house, a peculiar arrangement of stones near the eastern boundary. A week after her arrival, Beatrice was startled by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. A finely dressed man on a chestnut stallion reined in before her cottage. "Good day, madam," he called, his voice cultured but cold. "I am Henry Walton. I understand you have recently inherited this property." Beatrice wiped her hands on her apron, immediately recalling the journal entries. "I have, sir. I am Beatrice Payne, Eleanor Winfield's cousin." "Ah, yes." His eyes swept over the cottage, then the land beyond, calculating. A pity about Eleanor. She was a stubborn woman, like her husband before her. "In what way, sir?" Henry Walton dismounted, his boots gleaming despite the muddy path. "This land adjoins my estate. I have offered most generously to purchase it many times, but they would never sell. I had hoped with Eleanor's passing, more reasonable minds might prevail." Keeper emerged from behind the cottage, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Control your beast," Walton snapped. "Keeper, quiet," Beatrice commanded, though she found herself grateful for the dog's protective instinct. "Lord Walton, I have only just arrived. I have no intention of selling what little I have." His expression hardened. "I see Eleanor's stubbornness runs in the family. Consider carefully, Mistress Payne. This land is worthless for farming, poor soil, too rocky. You will starve come winter." "Perhaps. But it is mine to starve on." A cold smile touched his lips. "As you wish. But should you reconsider, my offer stands at 20 gold sovereigns. A generous sum for such modest holdings." After he departed, Beatrice returned to Eleanor's journal, reading more carefully. The entries following Frederick's death grew sporadic, filled with fear and suspicion. Eleanor wrote of strange men surveying the land when they thought no one was watching, of threats veiled as neighborly concern. Asterisk Frederick took his secret to the grave, but Keeper knows. I have seen him standing guard. Lord Walton suspects, but he cannot be certain. As long as the secret remains buried, I am safe. But I grow old, and my time approaches. I must ensure the truth passes to one who will not be corrupted by it. Beatrice closed the journal, troubled. What could possibly be hidden on this seemingly worthless plot of land that would interest a lord? And how did the dog factor into this mystery? That night, a storm raged. Rain poured through the portions of roof Beatrice had not yet repaired, and wind howled down the chimney, sending smoke billowing into the cottage. Exhausted from bailing water and moving her meager possessions to dry corners, Beatrice finally collapsed onto her pallet. A sudden, frantic barking woke her hours later. Keeper stood at the door, more agitated than she had ever seen him. "What is it, boy?" she asked, reaching for her shawl. The moment she opened the door, Keeper bolted into the night. The storm had passed, leaving a sky brilliant with stars and a full moon illuminating the landscape. Beatrice followed the dog, calling for him to return, but he raced toward the old well. Upon reaching it, Keeper circled the crumbling stone structure, barking urgently. Beatrice peered over the edge, expecting to see nothing but darkness. Instead, moonlight reflected off something below, water, where there had been none before. "The storm must have filled it," she murmured. Keeper barked again, then did something extraordinary. He leaped into the well. "Keeper!" Beatrice screamed, falling to her knees beside the well. She could hear splashing below, but in the darkness, she could not see the dog. "Keeper, come back." Minutes passed with only the sounds of splashing water. Then, Keeper's head appeared as he paddled in circles, something clenched in his teeth. He whined, looking up at her expectantly. "I cannot reach you," Beatrice cried, tears streaming down her face. The well was too deep, the sides too smooth to climb. In desperation, she ran back to the cottage, returning with rope from Eleanor's storage chest. Fashioning a crude loop, she lowered it into the well. With remarkable intelligence, Keeper swam to it, maneuvering so that the loop fell around his body. Beatrice pulled with all her strength, muscles screaming in protest, until the soaking dog scrambled over the well's edge. In his mouth, he carried a small metal object, a key, green with verdigris, but unmistakable in the moonlight. "What have you found?" Beatrice whispered, taking the key from the dog's mouth. Keeper shook himself vigorously, then immediately trotted toward the large oak tree, looking back to ensure she followed. At the tree, he began digging once more at the spot he had shown her days before. Too intrigued to stop him now, Beatrice joined in, using a broken branch to loosen the soil. After removing nearly 2 feet of earth, her improvised tool struck something solid, not a root or stone, but something made by human hands. By moonlight, Beatrice uncovered a small iron box embedded in the ground beneath the tree. The key from the well fit perfectly into its rusted lock. Inside lay a cloth-wrapped bundle. With trembling fingers, Beatrice unwrapped it, gasping at what was revealed. A small leather pouch filled with gemstones, rubies, emeralds, and diamonds that caught the moonlight and scattered it like stars. But more significant was the parchment beneath them, bearing a noble seal Beatrice recognized from the village church windows, the royal insignia. Dawn found Beatrice still at her kitchen table, the contents of the box spread before her. The parchment was a deed, not just to her cottage and the surrounding acres, but to the entirety of what was now Lord Walton's estate. According to the document, the land had been granted to Frederick Winfield's grandfather for services to the crown during the wars. Lord Walton's father had falsified documents and seized the majority of the land upon the elder Winfield's death, leaving only the cottage and surrounding acres to Frederick's father, who had been too poor to challenge the powerful Walton family. A separate letter in Frederick's hand explained how he had discovered the true deed hidden in the family Bible and how he had confronted the current Lord Walton with his discovery. Threats followed, and Frederick, fearing for his life, had hidden the evidence, telling only Eleanor and training Keeper to remember the hiding places. Should anything happen to us both, Frederick wrote, Keeper will guide our successor to the proof. The gemstones are our family's legacy as well, hidden by my grandfather when he realized the Waltons' treachery was afoot. A knock at the door startled Beatrice from her reading. Hastily gathering the items, she concealed them in her apron pocket before answering. A young boy of about 10 stood on her threshold, cap in hand. Begging your pardon, mistress. I am Hugh Winters from the village. My mother sent me to inquire if you might need help with your cottage. She says newcomers often struggle their first winter. Beatrice studied the child, thin, but with bright, intelligent eyes and an earnest expression. Your mother is kind to think of me. I could indeed use some help, especially with the heavier tasks. Hugh grinned, revealing a missing tooth. I am stronger than I look, mistress, and I know these woods well. Do you now? Beatrice considered the boy thoughtfully. Tell me, Hugh, what do you know of Lord Walton? The boy's smile faded. My father worked his lands, mistress. When father took ill last winter, his lordship turned us out. Father died on the road. Mother says his lordship has no heart, only a purse where it should be. Beatrice nodded slowly. I believe I will require your help, Master Winters. And perhaps your mother's counsel as well. Would you bring her to visit tomorrow? After Hugh departed, Beatrice returned to the documents. The deed alone would restore the rightful lands to her as Eleanor's heir, but challenging Lord Walton would be dangerous. The gemstones provided another option, wealth enough to start anew elsewhere, without confrontation. Keeper sat beside her, his mission fulfilled, yet his eyes still watchful. Beatrice stroked his damp fur. What would you do, old friend? She asked softly. Take the safe path or seek justice? The dog tilted his head, then rose and moved to the cottage window, gazing out toward the oak tree and the lands beyond, the lands that rightfully belonged to the Winfield heirs. The following day, Hugh returned with his mother, Martha Winters, a careworn woman with strength evident in her bearing despite her circumstances. My son speaks highly of you, Mistress Payne, Martha said after introductions. He says you have inherited a troubled legacy. More troubled than I first realized, Beatrice replied, deciding to trust these people who had also suffered under Walton's cruelty. She revealed the deed and Frederick's letter, watching Martha's expression shift from surprise to vindication. Many in the village suspected something was not right with the Walton claim, Martha said. Frederick once spoke out at the tavern, but none dared support him against such a powerful family. What would you do? Were you in my position? Beatrice asked. Martha considered carefully. The magistrate in the next county is known to be honest, unlike our own who is in Walton's pocket. If you presented this evidence to him, Lord Walton would know immediately who had betrayed him. I would fear for my safety before justice could be served. Then perhaps, Martha suggested, the approach must be less direct. The King's Justice visits the county seat 4 times yearly to hear significant cases. The next visit is but a month away. A plan began to form in Beatrice's mind, one requiring patience, discretion, and allies. For the next 4 weeks, she maintained the pretense of a struggling widow making the best of her poor inheritance. Lord Walton visited twice more, each time increasing his offer for the land, his frustration growing visibly when she declined. Hugh came daily, helping repair the cottage and clear the overgrown gardens. His quick mind grasped the significance of their secret mission, and his knowledge of local paths proved invaluable as they made preparations. Meanwhile, Martha quietly spread word among trusted villagers who had suffered under Walton's harsh rule. Former tenants, cheated laborers, and displaced families all provided testimony that would support the case against the Lord's family. The night before their journey to the county seat, Beatrice sat with Hugh and Martha in the now considerably improved cottage. Keeper lay by the hearth, his loyalty never wavering since the night of discovery. Are you afraid, Mistress Beatrice? Hugh asked, his young face serious in the firelight. Yes, she answered honestly. But fear has been my companion these many years. Fear of starvation, fear of homelessness, fear of dying alone. This fear at least serves a purpose beyond mere survival. Martha nodded approvingly. My husband always said courage is not the absence of fear, but acting rightly despite it. Your husband sounds like a wise man, Beatrice said softly. I hope we honor his memory tomorrow. We already have, Martha replied, reaching across to squeeze Beatrice's hand. The journey to the county seat took most of the following day. Beatrice had used a small portion of the gemstones to purchase a sturdy cart and mule, which now carried their small party, Beatrice, Martha, Hugh, and Keeper, who had refused to be left behind. The King's Justice, Sir Roland Fletcher, was an imposing figure with piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate the worth of each person who approached his temporary court. When Beatrice presented her case, placing the ancient deed and Frederick's testimony before him, a ripple of whispers swept through the assembled crowd. These are serious allegations, Mistress Payne, Sir Roland stated, examining the documents carefully. Lord Walton is a prominent landowner and contributor to His Majesty's treasury. I understand, Your Honor, Beatrice replied steadily. But truth must prevail regardless of a man's station. I have brought witnesses who will attest to the pattern of deception and cruelty practiced by the Walton family for generations. For hours, the court heard testimony from Martha, from other villagers who had made the journey, from a retired clerk who had once worked for the previous magistrate and confirmed that complaints against the Waltons had been systematically buried. Lord Walton arrived mid-proceedings, his face contorted with rage as he realized what was transpiring. This is preposterous, he shouted, striding toward the front of the court. These peasants conspire against me out of envy and laziness. Sir Roland raised a hand for silence. You will have your opportunity to respond, Lord Walton. For now, you will observe the proper decorum of this court. As the testimony continued, Keeper suddenly grew alert, his gaze fixed on Lord Walton. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Hugh, sitting beside the dog, placed a restraining hand on his neck. What troubles him? Beatrice whispered. I know not, Hugh replied. But he grows more agitated whenever Lord Walton moves. When Walton finally took the stand to defend himself, he presented forged documents of his own, elaborate papers purporting to show his family's legitimate purchase of the lands in question generations ago. As you can see, he concluded smugly, this woman's claims are baseless. The document she presents is clearly a forgery, likely created by her cousin's husband, who is known to be unstable in his final years. Sir Roland compared the documents carefully. Both sets of papers appear authentic to my eye. This presents a difficulty in rendering judgment. At that moment, Keeper lunged forward, breaking free from Hugh's grasp. Before anyone could intercept him, the dog had reached Lord Walton and clamped his teeth not on the man, but on the fine leather satchel he carried. Control that beast, Walton shouted, struggling to maintain his grip on the satchel. In the tussle, the satchel tore open, spilling its contents across the courthouse floor. Among the papers that scattered was a document bearing the same royal seal as the deed Beatrice had presented, but this one had visible alterations, areas where ink had been carefully amended. Sir Roland descended from his seat, picking up the fallen document. His expression darkened as he examined it. It would appear, Lord Walton, that you carry the original deed with your family's alterations still visible beneath the surface. He held the paper to the light, where the modifications became apparent. A most damning piece of evidence, and one you brought into my court yourself. Lord Walton's face drained of color. I was unaware of any alterations. These papers were my father's, and his father's before him, I suspect, Sir Roland interrupted. Each generation perpetuating and benefiting from the initial fraud. He turned to Beatrice. Mistress Payne, the court finds in your favor. The lands described in the original royal grant are hereby restored to you as the legal heir of the Winfield family. The courthouse erupted in cheers from the villagers present. Martha embraced Beatrice, tears streaming down her weathered face. Hugh knelt beside Keeper, burying his face in the dog's fur to hide his own emotion. Lord Walton was ordered to vacate the manor house within a fortnight and to make restitution to tenants he had unfairly evicted. Furthermore, charges of document falsification would be pursued against him, crimes that could result in imprisonment or hefty fines. As they left the courthouse, Beatrice felt oddly light, as if a weight she had carried even before discovering the truth had been lifted from her shoulders. "What will you do now, Mistress Beatrice?" Hugh asked as they prepared for the journey home. "Will you live in the great manor house?" Beatrice looked down at the boy who had become so dear to her in such a short time. "I think such a grand house would be too lonely for one woman and her dog," she replied thoughtfully. "But perhaps not too large for a woman, her dog, and friends who have become like family." Martha looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" "I am saying, Martha Winters, that your son has become the child my heart needed after losing my own. I am saying that the manor has many rooms, and the restored lands will need honest people to manage them fairly." Beatrice took a deep breath. "I am asking if you both would consider making your home with me." Hugh's face lit with joy, but he looked to his mother for her response. Martha studied Beatrice for a long moment. "You offer much to those who have given little in return." "You have given more than you know," Beatrice replied. "You have given me purpose beyond mere survival. You have helped me find justice, yes, but also a reason to care about that justice." A slow smile spread across Martha's face. "Then we accept, with grateful hearts." That evening, as they made camp on the journey home, Beatrice sat with Keeper beside her, stroking his graying fur. "You kept your promise to Frederick and Eleanor," she murmured. "You protected their legacy until the right time came." The dog leaned against her, his intelligent eyes reflecting the campfire. In them, Beatrice saw not just the faithful guardian of secrets, but a symbol of the resilience that had sustained her through her darkest days. Spring came to the renamed Winfield estate with a burst of new life. The manor house, cleansed of the Waltons' influence, became a center of fair governance for the surrounding lands. Former tenants returned to work fields under equitable arrangements. The cottage where Beatrice had first discovered her inheritance became Hugh's special project, a caretaker's home that honored Eleanor and Frederick's memory. One warm afternoon, Beatrice sat in the manor's garden, Keeper dozing at her feet. His muzzle had grown increasingly white over the months, his movements slower, but his devotion never wavered. "He will not last the winter," Martha said gently, joining Beatrice on the stone bench. "He has lived a long life for a dog." Beatrice nodded, tears threatening. "When I inherited a deserted cottage and a lonely dog, I thought fortune had abandoned me entirely. How wrong I was. The cottage contained justice. The dog embodied loyalty. Together, they restored not just wealth, but purpose." Martha placed a hand over Beatrice's. "And family," she added softly. "They restored family." From across the garden came Hugh's laughter as he played with a puppy, one of Keeper's line, born to a village dog the old hound had befriended. The sound of that laughter, so rare in the beginning, now filled the estate regularly. Beatrice smiled through her tears. "Yes," she agreed, watching the boy who had claimed her heart as surely as she had claimed this land. Most precious of all, they restored family. Keeper lifted his head at Hugh's approach, the puppy bounding ahead to jump playfully on the old dog. With what almost appeared to be a smile, Keeper allowed the exuberant greeting, then turned his gaze to Beatrice, faithful guardian, secret keeper, fortune finder. In that moment, Beatrice understood with perfect clarity that true wealth was not measured in land or gemstones, but in the love of those who stood beside you when the bitter winds howled, when secrets needed keeping, and when justice finally prevailed.